Yes, I'm still here, Hollywood. And coming up on today's episode, back in the day, Saturday night television was a huge opportunity for the three networks to create family TV. And for a decade, starting in the late 1970s, there was a show that, besides topping the ratings, was family-friendly and also became a huge promotion for sailing vacations. Let's just call it the precursor to today's Below Deck. This is Still Here Hollywood. I'm Steve Kmetko. Join me with today's guest, Isaac from the Love Boat, Ted Lange. Thanks, Ted, for coming to sit in on our little podcast here, Still Here Hollywood.
I'm still here, Steve.
Yeah, so am I. But I come back and forth from Chicago. You live in San Diego?
Well, we live in Oceanside, which is about 40 minutes outside of north of.
It's so beautiful down there.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
If you're going to retire, that's a place to do it.
That's really
if you
the
can afford
place
it.
to do it. And the beauty of it is my wife's family is all in Oceanside. So
you were talking about taking the train up?
Yeah.
You and your wife?
Mm-hmm.
I've never taken it up here, but I've taken it down to San Diego on a number of occasions.
Yeah.
And the one time I didn't take it, I was really sorry because it was on Thanksgiving Day and I drove down. Because I have a cousin who lives in San Diego and he usually sponsors Thanksgiving when I lived up here.
Yeah.
That was the longest 4 hours
I'm sure.
of my life.
I'm sure.
It was a good double what it normally is, you know. Did you have any favorite guest stars who appeared on the Love Boat?
Oh, God, yes. Yes, Gene Kelly. Gene Kelly appeared on our show. And the Mucky Muck said, "Don't talk to Gene. He's a grumpy guy. Okay, so just leave him alone. When you do your scenes, fine, but don't talk to Gene." And so we all said, "Okay, yeah, fine." So we were in Hong Kong, and we're sitting in a little van. And we're waiting. I'm waiting to shoot a scene with Gene Kelly. So he's sitting there. He's reading a magazine. And he wore contacts and glasses. Okay, so he's sitting there and he's reading. And I said, screw this. I'm going to go talk to Gene Kelly. So I go. He's sitting in one chair. And I sit across the room. I go, "Hi." And he's reading and he looks up at me and he goes back to reading. I said, "Can I ask you a question?" You can see him go, "What?" I said, "What was it like dancing with the Nicholas brothers?" Now, for your audience that don't know who they are, they're two black tap dancers out of the Cotton Club back at Harlem Renaissance. And Gene put them in his movies. So
they did some wonderful numbers together.
Oh, my God, they were incredible dancers. So he did like this. "You want to know about the Nicholas brothers?" And I said, "Yeah." So he told me this wonderful story about the Nicholas brothers. And then they call us on the set. We go on the set. We do a scene together. Then we're done and we go back to the bus, the little bus. He says, "Hey, you want to have a drink with me at the hotel?" I said, "Yeah, sure."
Do I?
Do I? And so I hooked up with him. After we'd finished our day's work, I hooked up with him, sat down in the hotel, and he was wonderful. It was totally different. And then on reflection, I said, I bet everybody, when they get a chance to talk to him, talks about Singing in the Rain. I had no interest in Singing in the Rain because I knew the Nicholas brothers, you know? So it was great.
Well, also, it would be, I don't know what I would do if I was put in that situation and then told, you can't talk to this person about whatever.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, sitting across from Gene Kelly, you'd have a million questions to ask about. Who else besides Gene Kelly?
Oh, Diahann Carroll. I kissed Diahann Carroll. I'm sorry, Mary. I kissed, that's my
His
wife. I kissed Diahann Carroll about 15 times before she realized I was messing up on purpose. So then she says, hey, cut that out. I said, okay, I'm sorry. You're just so beautiful. You're just so
She
beautiful.
was one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen.
Oh, man.
Drop dead, stop you in your
Gorgeous.
tracks. Yeah.
And she could kiss.
That I never learned.
That's my claim to fame is, and she could kiss. So yeah, it was fun. So she was a delight. You know, Fred Grandy and I had a thing called the Goldwyn Club, where we would take the older guest stars and take them out to lunch. And they go, "Why are you taking me out to lunch?" I said, we want to buy you lunch. So it'd be me and Fred and whoever the guest, Jack Guilford. So Jack, can we ask you something? After you ordered this lunch, can we ask you something? Oh, I see what this is. You want some stories? And we said, yeah. And he told me a wonderful story about how he was in New York, an actor, and this black woman's daughter was a dancer in the chorus at the Cotton Club. And the daughter said to the mom, I want to be an actress. I want to have a career in show business. And so they said, well, wait a minute. You don't know what you're doing. We don't know what you're doing. We're going to get somebody to watch you. And if that person says you have talent, then we'll support you 100%. So this mother sends Jack Guilford to the Cotton Club. I don't know how she knew him or what, but Jack Guilford goes to the Cotton Club to watch this girl in the chorus. And he comes back and he tells him, she's got talent. She's got talent. You mean Helena Horn has talent? Yes, your daughter, Helena Horn, although I would drop the Helena and just call her Lena. So that's, those are the great thing about our shows is that we would have those rising like Tom Hanks and Martin Short and Billy Crystal, and those that had been retired and were coming back and kind of doing maybe even a swan song appearance. Howard Keel, who did Kismet and stuff.
Annie Gets Your Gun.
Annie Gets Your Gun. He revitalized his career on our show. It was the first time he'd worked in years. And Aaron Spelling was an extra in Kismet.
Really?
Yes, Alms for the Poor. If you ever see Kismet in the first 5 minutes of the movie, Alms for the Poor, that's Aaron Spelling. So he's looking around and he's going, geez, he was an extra in my thing, and look at what he's done. And but Howard Keel did a scene. I'll never forget. He did a scene, and they said, "Cut, print," and everybody walked away. And he went like this. And I said, "What's the matter?" He said, "That wasn't it. I'm better than that. I could do it better." I said, "Well, let's call him back and do it again." He says, "No. They like what they saw. I just happen to know I could do better."
What I got inside me.
Yeah. So you can't call him back. Just move on. And so towards the end of the second day, I saw him do this. He did the scene. And then he went like this, "Steve, yeah, he got it back. He got it back." And so I said, "How was that?" He said, "I'm rolling now." So it was experiences like that. Gavin was great because towards the end of the first year, Fred and I kind of got a big head. We got a big head, and because we were young, we were in our 20-something, 30, and Gavin said, "Hey, come here, you two." Him and Bernie Coppell, because they'd been around a long time. They said, "Listen, this is not how you handle people that guest on our show. What? You go up to them, you shake their hand, and thank them for being here. You show them where craft services is. If they need to know the makeup room, you show them where that is. And any way that you can be helpful to those celebrities that are here, you be helpful.
They were all the guest stars, special guest stars that you had on that show, were probably a big percentage of why it was on so long.
Yeah.
People love seeing those old. I shouldn't say old.
But
seasoned performers, veterans, right?
They were veterans. But here's the other thing. The other thing is we, as a cast, got along. And I think that was primary. Because I did a previous series where there was fighting and walking off and,
storming out.
Oh, man. And I want his joke. And then whereas on Love Boat, it was, I think Isaac should say this. Okay. Oh, man. Okay. And then so that we were, particularly Fred and I, we had... and you can't bottle this. I mean, you don't know what the formula is, but two strangers walk on the set and have immediate chemistry. And that has translated to recently, Fred and I did I'm Not Rappaport. We did it together, still have our comedic chemistry, and we added Jill into the mix on this last run that we did, I'm Not Rappaport, where she played Fred's daughter. And it was a big hit. We were in Michigan, and it was a big hit. But you don't know someone's timing when you first walk on there. And you have to be generous with the other actor, or you're going to miss it. And we were all, Bernie, Gavin, Jill, Tweez, we were all generous with each other. There was no competition other than when I say my line, I'm going to be funnier than you. No, you're not. Oh, watch this. That's what we did. And I've been on the other end of that stick where can't wait to get home.
When Gilligan went to work on the SS Minnow, it was supposed to be for a 3-hour cruise.
Yes.
On the Love Boat, you were on for
10
years.
10 years.
Did you expect it to last that long when it started?
Gavin did. We didn't. Fred and I, because I had a deal with Jimmy Comack. You remember Jimmy Comack? Jimmy Comack, I did a series for him called Mr. T and Tina with Pat Morita. Okay? And I had a guest spot that turned into a regular. And he fell in love with my comedy. So he said, listen, my friend Aaron Spelling wants you on this show. He says, but if that doesn't work out, I'm going to do a series around you. At first it was going to be me and Pat, but the network didn't want Pat, and they wanted to give me some holding money so that I wouldn't take anything else. So Comack said, hey, take the gig, but if it doesn't work out, they told him the premise, and he went, that's not going to work out. He said, so he told me, he says, listen, I'm going to get you some holding money. And Fred had something else that he was up for. So Fred and I are going like, oh, you got these girls in bathing suits. This isn't reality. Nobody's going to watch this. And we would go on a cruise, and the cruise would all be elderly people. At the time we did the pilot, 1977, there were no young people on the cruise. It was the swan song of your grandmother or your grandfather. They would take a cruise to Mexico, come back, and sometimes they didn't even make it back. They had refrigerators on the boat.
Just in case.
Yeah, just in case. And there were, hey, what happened to the lady with the thing and the thing? Oh, she got off in Mexico. She's not coming back. But so Fred and I are going, we just don't see it. But Gavin said, this is a hit. And we said, oh, you sure?
You remain very close with Gavin.
Oh, yeah. I have to be careful because I start crying when I talk about him.
You were that close.
He was the greatest guy ever.
Did you consider him a mentor?
Yes. And he didn't have to look out for me. He didn't have to do that. But he knew some of the crap I was going through just as a performer, as a black performer. He had my back. We had producers. And same thing with Bernie and Fred. They had my back. We had a producer that didn't want to write for me. He didn't want to write love stories for a black character. And Fred and Bernie noticed it. And I'm going to the guy saying, hey, what about, and the guy's going, no. And what makes me mad is he was Canadian. He wasn't even American. Okay? So Fred and Bernie wrote a love story for me. Scatman Carruthers and Vernee Watson, they wrote a love story for me because this guy wouldn't do it, And I also used to say to the guy, hey, look, you have all the white characters at the front of the show, and at the end of the show, my character's not there. He says, well, you're a bartender. What would you be doing there? I said, well, you know what? Bernie's a doctor. He should be in sick bay. And the captain should be on the bridge. What are they doing there? He says, well, we're not writing you in. He says, look, you're an equal star. You just come in the middle of the show. And then someone would come to me in the show and say, I'm having a problem with my wife. And I would say, hey, have you tried scotch and gin or something? And the guy would go, and then he'd get back together with his wife at the end of the show. And they wouldn't let me come out and say, hey, I'm glad you took my advice. They would say, Doc would say, I talked to Isaac. He found out you got back with your wife, and he's happy it all worked out. Anything to keep me off of...
That sounds like take what you get and like it.
Yes.
Was their attitude.
It was totally that. Shut up and dribble. That's what it was. Shut up and dribble. And I would, every week, I would take the script to him. I say, hey, later on, I meet this guy. Can't we do something up front here like you do the other guys? So here's how I got around it. When they did Roots 2, and they wanted me to play Alex Haley's father, because Alex Haley's father was a short guy. He was 5'7", 5'6". So they said, get Ted. So we go to Aaron Spelling and he say, hey, listen, Ted would like to get some time away from the show because they're going to do Roots 2. And Roots was a
huge,
phenomenal hit. And so who wouldn't want, right? So Aaron says, no, I don't let my stars guest on anything else. I don't let them do movies. That's the Farrah Fawcett thing. She wanted to do movies. He wouldn't let her. Kate, what was Charlie's Angels? Kate Jackson was supposed to be the girl in Kramer versus Kramer.
Oh, right.
Okay? Spelling wouldn't let her out. Dustin Hoffman flew to L.A. to meet with Spelling, wouldn't let her out. So Spelling goes, so I thought at the time, it was a black thing, He's just doing this thing because I'm black. And then I saw these other things go down.
And the role went to Meryl Streep and she won an Oscar.
And she won. How does that make you feel?
Yeah.
So we say to Aaron, look, you're not utilizing him. You use him in the middle of the show. You could schedule it so we can work around that. And he said, what do you mean we only use him? He said, yeah, he wants to be in the front. He wants to be on the end. And you're not even utilizing. You got everybody but him. And so Aaron said, well, wait a minute. Because he didn't know. So we have this meeting, and Gavin had some complaints too, because Gavin was an appendage to the guest star. He said, I want some stories. All I do is say, welcome aboard, and I'm glad you solved your problem, but I want some stories.
Bon voyage.
Yeah, And so Aaron said to the writer-producer, he says, let's get Gavin some stories. And the guy says, okay, well, we'll try. And Ted, what is your thing? I said, well, the front and the back, and blah, 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 blah. I say, well, he turns to the guy, why isn't he in the front like everybody else? I said, He's a bartender. Aaron, why would he be in the front of the show? That doesn't make any sense. And so Aaron said, well, is there any reason he could be in the front of the show that a bartender would be? He said, well, if he was a head bartender, and you could see the guy want to go, oh, I said the wrong thing. Let me pull these words out. You could see him, man. And Aaron said, make him head bartender. So they did a whole episode on I became the head bartender.
We'll be back in a moment.
One time, Cloris Leachman's daughter came on a cruise, and she needed a shoulder to cry on and to talk to because she was going through a thing with her mom. And so she came and knocked on my cabin door. I opened the door. I said, yeah. She says, can I talk? I said, yeah, but I leave my door open. Because if I bring that girl into my cabin and close the door, you got to know this. There are going to be some upset people. Girl was 17 too at the time.
Did you ever get bitter about this stuff?
No, you can't be. Because it ain't on me. It's on them. Now, I don't have to hang out with you if I think that you're not righteous. I wrote a play called One Righteous White Boy. Do you know what a black entertainer needs to succeed in show business?
What?
One righteous white boy. And I wrote a thing for a guy named Jeff Wayne. And he's a white comedian. Okay? He came to me with all of his material. And he says, Ted, I want to put a one-man show together. I said, write a script. Write a script and then we'll talk about it. Now, if you tell most comedians that, write a script, you're done. They're not going to do it. They'll say, come down and see my act. I'm not writing it now. Jeff did. He wrote a script. He said, I want to do this, I want to do that, And so I looked at it and I said, look, Jeff, because it was very conservative. Okay, his jokes were very conservative, mainly for white guys. Okay, right-wing white guys. Steve Bannon would love his humor that he did. So anyway, I said, okay, look, Jeff, I edited his script. Can't do this joke. Why? Because it's a black joke. It's not funny. He said, I have guys laughing all the time. I said, they're white guys. And I said, let's cut that joke. I said, now you see this black joke here? Black people go, well, that's kind of true. And they'll laugh. This one, they won't laugh. This one, a lesbian joke. No lesbian is going to find that funny, amusing. Cut it. But this lesbian joke, they'll go, okay. And that's what I did. I went through the whole thing. Because they don't know where the line is. And I made the line. Okay. Steve, this thing took off like gangbusters. Everybody wanted the kid. They called him the new Archie Bunker. But they don't know where the line. I'm black. I know where the line is. Okay? Mm-hmm. So we had a deal that Jeff and I would be partners in this. So when he turned in the script, he put my name on the script and his name. This is Hollywood. Now, this part is the dark side of Hollywood. Okay? So first thing they try to do is separate me and him. And they say, you don't need the guy. He said, no, that's Ted. Ted directed this. I wouldn't have known anything, but he knew, how to make this, presentable to the general. You don't need him. And then they would corner me and they would say, let him go. I said, who the hell are you? He says, well, listen, I'm with a big agency and we always get our man. Let him go. You're not gonna make it from A to B. That's what they told me. Bernie Brillstein. I have a great story. But we went to Bernie Brillstein, and Bernie Brillstein's, I'm sitting there, Jeff is sitting here, and he goes to Jeff, he says, do we need him? And he goes, yeah, we need him. That's Ted. He directed it. Do we need him? I'm sitting there with the talent, and this guy, this producer guy who has all the power, is basically saying, get rid of him. So then he said, and Jeff kept affirming that he needed me. Finally, he said, do you have paper? Meaning, have you guys signed a contract? He said, yeah, we have paper. Now, that was a lie. We didn't have any paper. But he's a righteous white boy. Okay? So he went like this and turned to me and said, welcome aboard, Ted. Shakes my hand. Bernie Brillstein. Okay? So, long story short, I go through a lot of things like that. Am I bitter? No, I'm not bitter because I know what you're doing. I see it coming. Am I bitter that we have a new president? No, but I saw this coming. You know, I saw all of that stuff coming. The problem is you guys don't recognize it. But I know a con man when I see one. You know what I'm saying? So we go to William Morris, and I don't mind saying the name, William Morris. And I'm going to direct the pilot because I've been directing. Jeff is going to star in the show. And we got this guy named Buddy Mora. He's a manager. He was like Brillstein. Buddy Mora, and we got an agent, Lee Cohen, at William Morris. And Lee Cohen calls me up. And they've assured me, he said, we love you, Ted. Jeff trusts you. We want you to be with the show. It's a go. 2 weeks before we're to meet with Universal, NBC, Lee calls me up. You know, Ted, we've been thinking about this, and we think we need an A director. I said, I'm a director. And he said, no, we're going to go with Jimmy Burrows or Will McKenzie, somebody like that. I said, what are you talking about? You represent me. What are you doing? He says, no, we feel that Jeff needs a polished hand, a veteran, and you're not that. I've been doing this since '67. So what are you talking about? So he says, well, you're out.
Come on.
That's what I said. And I said it just like you said it. I said, come on, what are you talking about? So they go like this, Steve. They go like this. You're out. And I said, well, you can't do the show. They said, what do you mean we can't do the show? I said, because I own half of it. You don't own half of it. I said, check with the Writers Guild. Just a minute. Call the Writers Guild. Tell them that my name is on the script. Because they said, it's the guy's act. I said, but you didn't buy his act. You bought Big Daddy's Barbecue, which was the name of the show, Big Daddy's Barbecue. Play opened up in the backyard of guy's barbecue and grilling. Tells all these stories. So comes back on the phone and says, well, maybe we were a little hasty because the kid likes you and you guys have a chemistry and this and that and this and that. So, yeah, I mean, if you get into show business as a person of color, there's battles that you have to fight. They're not exactly the same as the other guys' battles, but you still got to fight them.
And that's still the case today?
Oh, baby. I can tell you stories right now. I'm trying to get my plays to theaters in New York. Well, you got to have a literary agent. Then you get the literary agent and he won't send it in. What are you talking about? I did this play. This play won Best Play NAACP. And you can't get these guys to look at my play? And they can't say, well, you're black. They can't say that, but you know what it is. So, yeah, it's still going on. Pay discrepancy. You know how much I read that Ariana Grande got?
I just read this too, as opposed to Cynthia Erivo in Wicked.
Now, why does she
I could not believe that.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Millions and millions of dollars
15
difference.
million to 1. 15 to 1.
Right.
Come on. And they're both equal. They're both, you know, story I heard about Danny Glover. Okay? Lethal Weapon.
With Mel Gibson.
Mel Gibson. They, this is just to give you an example.
Right.
Because the pay thing is ongoing. So they go to Mel Gibson and say, we want to give you $350 to sign on for Lethal Weapon 2. Goes, okay. Give him the check. Bang! Danny realized what's a monster hit it is. He says, I want $1 million. And he said, we're not giving you $1 million. Get the hell out of here. So he said, no, this was a hit. I want $1 million. And they've made a deal for Mel to get 7. And Danny, they want him to have like 10% of that. They don't want to give him $1 million. So they go to Mel and said, look, Mel, looks like we're going to have to get another, I'm sure they didn't say N-word, but it looks like we have to get another guy for you. Maybe Ben Vereen, Lou Gossett, somebody like that. And Mel Gibson goes, hey, no, the chemistry is me and this guy. They said, no, you don't understand. He wants $1 million. He said, well, you're giving me 7. They go, no, we're not giving this guy $1 million. He said, well, then I'm not doing it. He said, you have to do it. He says, I'll return the money. I'm not doing it without him. You know how much they gave Danny Glover?
How much?
$999,999.
Just because.
And 99 cents. Now, someone from Warner Brothers Contracts told me that story. So if it's a lie, it's on her.
Okay.
So yes, the answer is it's going on right now.
Still.
If a white girl walks into my trailer, I'm leaving that door.
Leave that door open. What was your worst experience with a guest star?
Worst experience is after Gavin told us to go up to the guest star, shake their hands, and welcome them to the show. I went up to a guest star. I said, hey, my name is Ted Lange. Welcome to the show. And he went like this. And walked away. Well, who does that to anybody? Who does that to anybody? But I had on my little red jacket. There's a couple of other guys with red jackets. I guess he thought I was an extra. And even if he did, why would you do that to an extra, right? So about a half hour later, he comes up with the director, and he says, Ted, I want to introduce you to your scene partner here, so-and-so, so-and-so. And the guy looks, nice to meet you. I went, yeah. And this guy was a fairly big guy and he used to have a golf and tennis thing.
Tournament.
And every year he would invite me. But I already know who you are. Why would I go?
Yeah.
I know who you are.
You want to let us in on who it was?
No, I don't want to do that.
Okay, I thought I'd give it a shot. When Jill was here, she was telling us some experiences, bad experiences she had with Douglas Kramer. What were your experiences with him?
Well, I knew who I was dealing with. See, the whole thing is you got to know who you're dealing with. If you know who you're dealing with, then you
navigate.
You can navigate yourself through the thing. And Tweez made some mistakes, and those mistakes were with Douglas Kramer. But that's our boss. Douglas Kramer, Aaron Spelling. Those are our bosses. You know, so if you understand that's your boss and you understand, where the deal is, you try to navigate where you're going to go. But Jill was a little girl.
Yeah.
That's, and when people say, hey, my kid wants to be in show business, I said, send them to dance class, send them to voice lessons. Let them take acting classes, but don't let them be professional. Because they got to find out who they are.
First.
Yeah, because I saw a couple of people. I see. The other thing I used to do is I used to go around because I wanted to direct. I'd go around the different shows and watch the directors, or I'd make friends with a director. I said, "Can I come watch it?" Yeah, and so I do that. But what happens is sometimes the directors forget they're talking to a kid, and they talk to them as if they're an adult, and then so you have them treated a certain way. I remember Alan Rafkin, who was a director. He was working on One Day at a Time, and one of the kids on there turned to their father and said, "Get me a drink, a Coke." Father got up and went and got the Coke. And Alan Rafkin was incensed, and he pulled the kid away and he said, "Hey, that's your dad. You don't demand a Coke from your dad." And that's a problem with kids in show business. I know they got to have them. But you see all of these guys going south, you know? So I say, let the kid grow up, because it's going to be tough enough as an adult to navigate what you're going to do, to watch out for the drugs, to see who's leading you, somewhere where you don't want to go.
Astray.
Yeah.
Ted, one of the other things that really caught my attention when I was doing my research on you was something you did with Jenna Jameson.
Yes. One of my fun things I did with Jenna Jameson.
Jenna Jameson, for those who may not know, I used to run into Jenna every year at the Cannes Film Festival.
Oh,
because
did
she was,
you?
Yes, she was there selling her wares.
Yes.
I mean, professionally.
Yeah.
But she was a very well-known and very well-liked adult film star.
Yes.
And you did.
Some people say pornographic, but adult will work.
Adult sounds much nicer. You did a sex and advice column with her.
Yes.
Called Ask Isaac?
Yes.
Why Ask Isaac?
Because I was the bartender, and from the television show Love Boat, people would come into the bar and they'd ask Isaac, "Hey, Isaac, I got it done, the bone. And I would say, "Hey, do this." Now, what I did, my goal was to make sure, it was a men's magazine, first of all. So you got young men reading the magazine. So my goal was, first of all, to make sure if they were having sex, that it was protected sex. So I was a big advocate for condoms. And then I tried to add humor into the advice. So whatever you said, I was looking for the joke. Whatever the question was, I was looking for the joke. So I did that for a couple of years, and they would fly me into New York. And not with Jenna, because what happened is Jenna's things, I said, what happened to Jenna Jameson? Because they let her go, and they got Beth Ostrovsky, who was Howard Stern's wife now. But back then she was dating Howard Stern. So they got her, Beth, to take Jenna's place, because Jenna, everything she did, she would turn it around, and if it was a question where she could hit on a girl, she would hit on the girl and say, "And if that doesn't work, call me," So I think every once in a while, Beth used a Howard Stern joke, because Beth is much younger than Howard, and it was a joke I would have made, being of a certain age bracket. And but Beth, and so I said, "How did you meet Howard? So she told me the story, but that happened for a while. But I would fly in to New York, they'd put me up, and they'd take pictures of me with a sailor cap and a pipe, a la Hugh Hefner. And I would take pictures, and Beth would be in a nightie of some kind. And she was gorgeous. Almost as pretty as my wife. But
nice save, Ted.
Yeah,
nice save.
Thank you. But yeah, I did do that for a while. But my main goal was condoms and humor. If I could work those two things in the answer, then we were doing all right.
Condoms can be pretty funny. Back with more in a moment. If you'd like to be more involved with us at Still Here Hollywood, you definitely can. Just visit patreon.com/stillherehollywood. You can support us for as little as $3 a month. You can get our episodes a day before they post anywhere else. You can see what guests will be coming up and submit questions for them. You can even tell us what stars you want us to have on as guests. You'll see what goes on before and after the episode, plus exclusive behind-the-scenes info, pics, video, and more. Again, that's patreon.com/stillherehollywood. Ted, what have you been doing lately?
Well, when I was on Love Boat, I petitioned for 4 years to direct episodes.
And you got to, right?
And finally, in the 5th year, they let me direct episodes. And then I had a friend of mine that was a writer. Her name was Jean Ford. And she would pitch ideas to me. So then I went back to the producer. I said, I'd like to write some episodes. So they taught me some of the rudiments to writing. And then when the show was over, I kept on writing because I kept finding things that interest me. For instance, I gave you this flyer about my latest play, which is about the first president of the United States, and that was a guy named John Hanson, not George Washington. And that's what I try to find things that, well, nobody knows that. Everybody knows George Washington, the first president, but he wasn't. He was the 9th president. And they had 8 guys before him. The first one was a guy named John Hanson. But the difference was the United States had the Articles of Confederation. And then they went to Washington and said, hey, we need you to be president. He says, no, not until you get a better system. And they said, well, what do you mean? He says, well, I want a constitution. I don't want to do the United States with the Articles of Confederation. And so that's what my play is about. My play is about entertainment and information. So what I try to do is entertain you about a situation you may not know about. I've got another George Washington play called George Washington's Boy, and I did that about maybe 20 years ago. And that was all from the point of view of George Washington's slave. He had a slave named William Lee. And on his deathbed, he only freed one slave, and it was William Lee. And so I actually got the same cast back for this new play. And it's just a lot of fun. So I write plays now. I've written 27. Wow. This is my 27th play, John Hanson. And they're all, they go off in different directions. I've got a trilogy of historical plays. I've got comedies. And I've got Shakespearean plays.
I wanted to ask you about the first one you wrote, George Washington's Boy. Because it's an interesting title.
Yeah.
And I'd like to know, as a person of color, how much does that weigh on you when you're writing a play?
Well, that's the whole point of my doing it, was to do it from a person of color's point of view at that time period in the 1700s. So they don't tell us so much.
You know, I thought I paid attention in school, but apparently I didn't.
No, you paid attention. They just weren't telling you the deal. See, and that's what I do. For instance, George Washington, when he became president, he went to Philadelphia. In Pennsylvania, they had a law. If you keep a slave 6 months, you have to free them if they want their freedom. I never heard that.
No.
And so there was a chef, a cook that he had named Hercules. And this guy, actually, there's a painting of him, and they know about him at Mount Vernon, because whenever I write, I try to go to the different places, because you pick up books and literature that you can't pick up nationally, but locally they'll tell you things. I wrote a play on John Brown and Harper's Ferry, and there were 5 black guys with John Brown. They tell you about his sons. They tell you about John Brown and his sons. but there were 5 black guys with John Brown. And so when I went to Harper's Ferry to research, I found books about these guys. You know, Frederick Douglass was supposed to be, if you know who Frederick Douglass is, Frederick Douglass was supposed to be at Harper's Ferry. And he secretly met with John Brown. And John Brown told him the plan: I need you to hive the bees, meaning to help me gather up the slaves so that we can start this thing. And when Frederick Douglass heard the plan, he said, no, that's a perfect steel trap. I'm not doing it. And so he tells his bodyguard, he says, come on, let's go. And the bodyguard says, I think I'm going to go with the old man. And so the bodyguard leaves Frederick Douglass and goes with John Brown. Man, I mean, when you tell the true history, it is so fascinating.
Is this the same John Brown whose body lies a moldering in the grave?
Same guy.
Same guy.
Same guy that inspired the Revolution and inspired the Civil War. Same guy. And so I've got an American Revolutionary play. I've got a pre-Civil War play, and I have a Civil War play that I'm going to do in New York in September of 25. It's called Lady Patriot, and it's about a black slave girl who could read and write, and she was put in Jefferson Davis's house, his White House, and she was a spy. She was writing everything down because she could walk around the room cleaning, and they'd talk freely and openly. Nobody knows about her. And if you go to Virginia, I did a tour of the White House in Virginia, and they're clinging to the past. Boy, are they clinging. And so they won't even acknowledge that this girl existed, but she did. Her name is Mary Bowser. And if you Google that name, you'll find out about her. But if you really want to know about her, come see my play in New York in September, because I did the deep dive for you. So that's what I do. I'll find a subject that interests me that I might think, maybe Steve doesn't know about this. Let me write something.
That'd be a pretty safe bet.
So let me write something, and then I start finding character. They don't realize in the history books, they kind of make them dry when they're teaching it. But if you really delve into the character, you see the personalities. You can see the personalities. James Buchanan, who was the president before Lincoln, was gay.
My people.
Huh?
My people.
Yes. Well, nobody told us.
Yeah.
You know, that he was gay. He had he had a senator that he was with, that he was his wife. And when that person died, he then they called him a bachelor, right? He was the bachelor.
Confirmed.
But yeah, confirmed bachelor. And then when he was still in the White House, he needed someone to hostess, so he called his niece. Well, geez, that's incredibly fascinating. We don't know this stuff.
No, we don't. And that's something else I'd like to ask you about. You know, as a gay man, I've heard the words faggot, queer, homo. You've heard colored, black, African American now.
N-word.
N-word. Oh, that's right. I didn't want to say it.
Yeah. Let me tell you a story.
Okay.
All right.
I
was on the Love Boat. We would host parties, okay? And we hosted a party on the boat, and they had us at different tables, okay? I'm the only black guy at the table. So the president said, hey, Ted, I got a joke for you. Funny joke. And his wife says, don't tell that joke. So now I know. It's a joke probably with the N-word in it.
Yeah.
And I'm the only guy at the table, right? So I said, no, that's all right. Let's let's talk about tennis. We're talking about tennis, and I'm taking tennis. He said, no, I want to tell you this joke, Ted. It's really funny. And the wife says, don't tell the joke. And so we sidetracked this guy, and he doesn't get to tell me the joke. Okay? Pissed off. Guy's pissed off. Now, the culmination of that story is that years later, I wrote a play about 4 women called 4 Queens, No Trump. Nothing to do with the president, but it has to do with playing a Trump card. 4 Queens, No Trump. And this guy's son was a friend of mine. And the son had a wife who was in my production of Othello. So she played Bianca. So I said, hey, I'm doing another play. I want you to come see it. So she brings her husband. He loves the play. Now the president is the ex-president. And he's got a deal to produce shows. So the kid says, I want my dad to come see this. Let's make this a sitcom. Okay, great. So he comes back 8 more times. He's loving it. And finally he gets his father to come see the show. Packed house, primarily a black audience. Big laughs in this play. Intermission comes to me and says, hey, Ted, we got to go. My wife, we got to go. It's too hot in there, and excuse. But I'm looking at him, and I'm thinking, you're still mad about that joke. You didn't get to tell me that joke. And had you got to tell me the joke, I might have had a half-hour sitcom. But that's the kind of stuff, I mean, that the stuff that I have had to deal with, you can't be mad. You can't be mad. If they see the anger in your eyes, you're done. So you can't be mad. But you have to figure out a way for yourself to live with the situation they're going to put you in. So they put me in a situation where this guy wants to tell a joke. If I can figure out a way that I don't have to be humiliated or be the butt of a joke, I'm going to try to figure that out. Mm-hmm.
But get past it on your terms.
Yeah, I have to do it on my terms, exactly. And that's the thing about Hollywood. One time, Cloris Leachman's daughter came on a cruise, and she needed a shoulder to cry on and to talk to because she was going through a thing with her mom. And so she came and knocked on my cabin door. I opened the door, and I said, yeah. She says, can I talk to you? I said, yeah, but I leave my door open. Because if I bring that girl into my cabin and close the door, you got to know this. There are going to be some upset people. Girl was 17, too, at the time. So anybody that walked past my cabin could see me talking to this girl, but nothing was going on. Now, you got to know that. And I just saw recently where the guy from This Is Us said the same thing. He said, yeah, and this is now, like a couple of years ago. He said he would sit, women would come to his trailer, white women would come to his trailer, and he'd leave his dressing room door open because he couldn't close it.
Right.
And you got to know that. You got to know what the deal is,
And we'll be right back. Hey, a more serious note here. I also read that you lost your mother to COVID.
Yeah, golly. Yeah, my mother was a force of nature. Great talker, as my wife will tell you. It's where I get it from. And she was a pioneer in Bay Area television. She had a talk show on PBS. Then when they started doing local stations, like back then it was UHF,
Right.
KBHK. She had a talk show on KBHK, and so she would get on. She was very politically motivated. So we always talk politics in our house, and that was very, very fortunate for me because listening to her taught me how to deal with these situations that I'm telling you about. You know, one time this guy, the producer, wanted my mother to be a guest star on Love Boat. And he called her and said, we want to bring... And he was trying to placate me without putting me... he's trying
Without putting you in the middle?
Yeah, man. So I called up my mom. I said, Mom, I don't want you to do the show. She said, okay. No debate. That's my mom. That's how we dealt. If she said to me, I need you to do this, boom, it was done. We had a great relationship. I had a great relationship with my father because my father was an actor in the 50s. My father was at a theater here in Los Angeles called the Ebony Showcase, where they put black actors in white plays. So Take a Giant Step, The Detective Story, all those plays that were done in New York in the 50s, they would come out here and they'd do them black. And the guy that did it was a guy named Nick Stewart. He owned Ebony Showcase, and he was lightning on Amos and Andy, if you remember that. I don't know if you know that show at all.
Oh, a little bit.
Yeah. So he was lightning, but he had a theater, and he was training all of these guys. And one of the first guys that he trained was a guy named Jimmy Edwards. Jimmy Edwards did one of the first integrated movies with Stanley Kramer. I forget the name of it. But Jimmy Edwards was in this movie, a war movie about a soldier that needs a blood transfusion, and he gets a blood transfusion from a black soldier. This is back in the 50s. Mm-hmm. And Jimmy said, he was my father's best friend. We'd go over to the house, and Jimmy Edwards said, I got the gig, and there were only 11 people in the audience, which means never slouch. If it's not enough people, don't say, well, who's going to... Never slouch. Always do your best, because there's 11 people there that need to see it. So Home of the Brave, that was the name of the movie. Home of the Brave, Stanley Kramer and Jimmy Edwards. James Edwards was the star of that, and the last film he did was with George C. Scott Patton. He's the one at the end that dresses Patton. He's the black domo. In a sense, I grew up around show business, and so every summer my brother and I would come down from the Bay Area, and we see my dad in a play, And my dad was a good little actor, but problem with my dad was he was too fair. He was very fair-skinned because he's from Louisiana, and back then you wanted dark because you were going to be in a Tarzan movie, Jungle Jim. You were going to be a servant in a plantation movie. So my father was too light. So he towards the 60s, he would get one or two little film things. But basically, he was a stage actor. He never really got to do the deal,
Backtracking quite a bit, how did you get the role of Isaac?
Okay, I did a series called That's My Mama.
Right.
Now, I'm not going to tell you that was a series everybody was fighting on because that wouldn't be right. But I did this series for 2 years called That's My Mama. And after that, I left that series, and I had a very flamboyant character. And Viola Davis, if you ever read her book, I'm in her book. Because one of the things that inspired her was that character on That's My Mama. I
Good
didn't know
actress.
that. Yeah, great actress. So this next series, after that was an ABC series. After that, I did another series with Pat Morita called Mr. T and Tina. And in that series, it was written by the women, not the women, Madeline Pugh and Bob Carroll Jr., who were I Love Lucy writers. They didn't have any Asians on this show, which again goes back to what you're talking about earlier. Well, how come they didn't have, if they're doing a Japanese sitcom, why not have some Japanese writers on it?
Right.
They didn't do it. They gave the jobs to their friends, okay? But on that series, I had a definitive character in my mind, and I played a custodian. So I knew exactly what I wanted. I went to the costume department. I told them, this is what I want to do. And they had to run it by the producers, of course. On that show, I would come in for 3 minutes. What's the problem, Mr. T? Well, the pipes are okay. And I do my little bit. Now, they would judge the laughs. When I came on, the laugh meter went up. When I left, it went back down. Comac noticed that. So when I went in, da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da. So that's when he started saying, this kid is funny. We like this kid. We shot 8 shows. On the 4th show, they canceled us. Okay? So now they called my agent and said, we got a pilot. And we want Ted to go in and interview with Doug Kramer. I go in to 20th Century Fox, meet Doug Kramer. Said, do you get seasick? I said, no, I don't get seasick. Well, do you ride a motorcycle? Yeah. Do you ride a horse? Everything is give me the job. Do you get seasick? No, I don't get seasick. He says, the network likes you. I said, oh, great. Because now the network's paying attention because I did this comedy and that comedy, and they're getting ready to come up with another comedy on a boat. Yeah, okay, cool. What do you want me to read? You don't have to read anything. You don't want me to read? No, it's okay. I leave. Now, this has been a bone of contention with Fred Grandy and Bernie Coppell. So Bernie Coppell, we're sitting around, actors sit around like this. And so Bernie Coppell says, hey, when did you come in for your screen test? I didn't see you there. And I knew there some of the other guys, but I didn't see you there. Did you come in early in the morning or did you come in late afternoon? Because I was there most of the day. I said, Bernie, I didn't audition. You didn't audition? I said, no, the really good actors didn't have to. And that's it. So if you ever interview Bernie, ask him about that. Because I teased him for 10 years. For that, like we would do a scene and he'd mess up. I said, that's why you had to audition. So he and I, the thing about it was, the actors I was with were wonderful actors. They were just confident, not backbiting, you know what I mean? So that if the joke worked better with you, they gave it to you,
You became so well known as Isaac,
Yeah.
the black guy on
Yeah.
a Love Boat.
Yeah.
Did you feel like that hurt your career at all, the recognition?
I pivot because there were a couple auditions I know I would have been good for. Well, I could get mad. I could be bitter. I just pivot. And that's how my directing career, I direct a lot of theater and I write plays. I'm pivoting because I still want to be in show business. Because I was told, Steve, I was never going to make it in show business. And to my surprise, what I found out, show business encompasses a lot of things. It's not just standing on stage singing lines. You could stay in show business if you just direct plays or direct television or direct movies. I directed Fall Guy because Lee Majors and I got drunk together. We were in Hong Kong, and I swear to God, his back was up against the wall of this hotel, and my back was up against the wall of the hotel because we were so drunk we didn't want that building to fall. And so during that, Lee Majors said, "Hey, I hear you direct." I go, "Yeah, I direct." He says, "Why don't you direct my show?" I said, "Oh, yeah, okay, cool. I'd love to direct your show. And don't worry, if you get into trouble, I'll help you." I said, first of all, I'm not going to get into trouble. And second of all, I went to the American Film Institute. I studied directing. What are you talking about if I get into trouble? No, don't worry. You get into trouble, I'll be there. Okay? Now, here's a good Lee Majors story. Okay? I'm directing. And the makeup guy says, it's about the second day, maybe third day. And the makeup guy said, "Hey, how come Lee Majors is so nice to you?" I said, "What are you talking about?" He says, "He tears directors apart, particularly new directors. He cuts them a new anus." So, "Oh, really? Well, maybe they weren't that good." Because I'm a confident guy, right? So he said, no, that doesn't make any sense because I've seen him do really good directors. Da, 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 da. So we're doing a scene, and Lee likes the Stolichnaya. That's what we did when we were in Hong Kong, Stolichnaya. So we're doing a scene, and he had a refreshment earlier in the day. So this is the late afternoon, and by the time we get to the late afternoon, he's got to be careful. And he did this thing where we're in a hospital room, and he trips going to the bed where the heroin is. He trips. Do the scene. I said, "Cut." And we had done about maybe 6 other takes. So I said, "Let's do it again." And he says, "Wait 1 minute. I need to talk to you. Come here." So I go over to him, and we walk off the set. And as I'm walking off the set, I look at the makeup man, and he's doing yes. So he takes me over, and he said, "What was wrong with that shot?" I said, "Well, you tripped going to the bed. I'd like to get it clean." And he said, "Are you going to cover it?" Meaning, are you going to take a close-up over the shoulders, da-da-da? I said, "Yeah, I'm going to cover it." He said, "Let me tell you something. I'm not going for the envelope. I'm going for the parking lot." What does that mean?
Yeah.
He says, "I'm not trying to win awards. I'm trying to get home by 6 o'clock. And I said, "Oh," I said, "is that the rules?" He said, "Yeah, you're damn right. That's the rules." I said, "Okay, I didn't know. I'm cool. I'm happy with that." He said, "So that's the print?" I said, "No, let's do one more." And so we walk back to the set. My nuts are clanging. Clang, clang, clang. Because Lee Majors, because what he did was, he kind of did this. I said, "Let's do one more." Okay. Because he knew I wanted the best out of him. I didn't want, I could have been sloppy and just, fudged it. Stay on a close-up as he walks over to the bed. But it would have been better if we see him go, Anyway, so he and I became good friends. We became good. And I did a number of shows of The Fall Guy. And just recently I was in Tennessee at one of those autograph shows. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't seen him in 30 years.
Wow.
And so he lives in Houston. And so I went over to him. I said, "Hey." He said, "Hey." And we caught up. It was great. We caught up.
That's nice.
Yeah, it is. It was really nice.
What are some of the other roles you've played?
I did Othello. I did a
Shakespeare.
film. Shakespeare. I did a film. I went to the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts.
That Lynn Redgrave wrote you a letter of recommendation?
Lynn Redgrave wrote me a letter. But see, I was directing her, and she would quote Shakespeare, and I would quote Shakespeare. I did Romeo and Juliet. She did da-da-da, da-da-da, and we were throwing back. And she said, "You should go to the RADA." And I said, "Oh, Lynn, look, I make really good money. I'm famous. And, really, what do I need with RADA?" And she looked at me and she said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were an actor." I went, Well, wait a minute. And so I then investigated it after her. And then I went back to her and I said, "Would you write me a letter of recommendation?"
You didn't say to her, "Lynn, I'm going for the parking lot, not the
No,
envelope."
didn't do that. No, I didn't do that. So, but you know what? At that institution, I learned how to use words. You think you know how to use words, but when you study, and we were studying iambic pentameter, so there's certain emphasis on certain words, hard, soft, whatever. And I learned this thing, and that's where I got introduced to Othello. And so my teacher said, "You should do this thing from Othello." I said, "Why do all you Englishmen want us to do Othello? I want to do Richard III. And he said, "Well, if you're afraid of Othello." "No, I'm not afraid." "Well, then just do Othello. We'll get to Richard. Don't worry, we'll get to Richard." And so I did Othello, and I fell in love with the part. Now, oddly enough, I did a production of it in L.A. Doing that production, I did it for black folks. It was in a community theater thing, okay? Did this production of Othello, which, incidentally, my wife came all the way from Orange County to see me do it. And
That's a good wife.
Yeah. Well, she wasn't even a girlfriend then.
Oh.
And
Maybe she was auditioning.
yeah, man. So I did it, and after I did it, I would meet black people, and they would come up to me and they say, "Hey, I saw you in Othello." I go, "Yeah." They said, "Well, what was this part about here?" I said, "Didn't you get that?" No, what was that?" And so then someone else would come up to me, "Hey, I saw you in Othello." "Oh, thanks." "Hey, when you did the thing, what was that?" So what I did, Steve, was I wrote a prequel to Othello in iambic pentameter. Because white guys will say to you, "Oh, you wrote a prequel, huh? Yeah, but you didn't do it." And I said, "No, I did." "What?" That gets them. I love it. "You wrote it in iambic pentameter?" "Yes, I wrote it in iambic pentameter." So, but what it does is it shows the evolution of Othello all the way up to the first scene in Shakespeare's play. So you see him meet Desdemona. You see him tell Desdemona stories. You see him break off his relationship with Emilia, who is Iago's wife. And you see Iago start to suspect that Othello was with his wife. So you see all of that. So it's a prequel to, and then you go right into Othello and you haven't lost a step. So that play is called The Cause My Soul. And actually it's on Amazon. I have 3 Shakespearean plays, Steve. I have The Cause My Soul, which is the prequel to Othello. I have The Heart of Shylock, which is Merchant of Venice. And it's all from Shylock's point of view. Because originally it was a comedy, and they made Shylock the butt of the jokes. And when the previous president, I believe it was 45, did all of this stuff to immigrants, I wrote a play from an immigrant's point of view to let you, I started to write a story about Mexicans, but it was too easy. But talking about Jews in Venice in the 1500s, the stuff they did then, they were doing later. If you were Jewish and you were in Venice, you had to be behind the gates in the ghetto by 6 o'clock. If you were in the center of Venice and you were thirsty, you couldn't drink from the water fountain. So I did this whole research, and Muranos. Do you know what Murano is?
Yes.
Okay, I got a whole thing about Muranos in this play about Shylock. And his best friend in the play is Othello. And they both talk about being immigrants. So I wrote this whole thing, and I've done readings of that. And then I got another one, a play called Shakespeare Over My Shoulder, and I did some research on Shakespeare. That Shakespeare, there is a debate about if Shakespeare wrote all the plays. There's a big debate on this. And some people think it was Edward de Vere. Some people think it was Francis Bacon. Some think it was Christopher Marlowe. And I wrote a play about who really wrote the plays. And I got these different sources. I was doing a lecture.
I think it was Barry Manilow.
No, it wasn't Barry. He would have sung it, but he wouldn't have wrote it. But so I did these plays. I did this speech at a Shakespeare conference. Okay, and it was on Othello, because I don't think William Shakespeare wrote Othello. I think it was a guy named Edward de Vere. And then I put forth my thesis on this and the thing, because the play is taken from a novella. Everybody acknowledges the novella by a guy named Cinthio. And Cinthio's novella never made it to England. Shakespeare never left England. How did he find out about this? Edward de Vere was in Venice. And there are things that people say that this is really peculiar to Venice. You have to be there to know this. That's in the play. So I did this whole thing. Well, I'm with Shakespearean scholars. So they come up to me and say, "Hey, Ted, wasn't de Vere. Wasn't? No. It was Christopher Marlowe. Here's my book. I'm going to give you my book. Read about Marlowe." I said, okay. "Hey, Ted, wasn't de Vere. It was Francis Bacon. Here's my book on Francis Bacon." So I got a book on Edward de Vere. I got one on Francis Bacon. I got another. And so then I just started reading it, and I said, there's a play in here. And then you got the guy, Shakespeare, who wants to be on stage. He's an actor. And I put in every cliche that an actor goes through. I do it with this character of William Shakespeare wanting to be on stage, and then segue into writing, and because the nobles at that time couldn't attach their names to plays or it would anger the queen. So what they did was they needed a front. They paid this guy, look, we're going to put your name on this. Shakespeare, William Shakespeare. And de Vere changes it to Shakespeare later. But anyway, so I've got a trilogy of plays on Amazon called Shakespeare Over My Shoulder, and it has those 3 plays in it.
What was going through your head the morning after Love Boat Wrapped?
I thought I was going to go into the movies and do light comedy. That's what I thought. I thought because of my recognition factor that it would be easy, and that so I was mapping out my career for movies, and then first I did a pilot of That's My Mama, and I was the lead now. I had been the minor character in it. They came to me. They said, "Love Boat's Wrapped. We want you to be the lead in this reboot of the series. Okay, they wrote it, and there was pay discrepancy. Okay,
Yeah.
Pay discrepancy. Okay, I had Judy Landers was with my agent. Do you know Judy?
Oh, yeah, Judy and Audrey Landers.
Yes. Judy was doing Waylon and Flowers. Waylon Flowers and Madam.
Right.
She was getting $10,000 an episode. And she was a minor character on the series. So Columbia came to me and said, hey, we want you to do this, da-da-da. Okay. Oh, we're going to pay you $7,000. Oh, whoa, wait a minute. I'm the star of this? Yeah. Well, I want 10. So I'm going to tell you, this is fun. Okay. And you can't be mad. So they said, well, if we pay you 10, we're going to have to, some other things are going to suffer because we're giving you 10. And I said, I tell you what, give me Columbia stock. Give me the 7 and 3,000 in Columbia stock. It'll be the 10. They go, oh, no, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. So I said, well, I want 10. And so finally they go, okay, you got the 10.
Not, we'll give you $9,999
No,
99 cents.
Yeah. No, but here's where it gets Hollywood. So I've agreed, sign the contract to do this thing. They come back to me and they say, hey, Ted, we got What's Happening Now, which is a reboot. We think we're going to need that to help us with your pilot. So, would you do a guest star on What's Happening Now? Oh, yeah, sure, absolutely. So, top of the show, which means the most you can get, is $2,500. Okay? Top of the show for a guest appearance. So, What's Happening Now opens up. Hey, it's time for Thanksgiving. Let's go to Washington, D.C. and see my aunt. Blackout. The next 20 minutes is me, focused on me, and that's my mama. The next 20 minutes. Then at the end of the 20 minutes, ding dong, hey, we came here for Thanksgiving. Come on in. Now what they did was they clipped off that end and clipped off the front. Put in titles, put in end credits, and they never paid me $10,000. They paid me $2,500 for the pilot. Okay.
That's Hollywood.
That's Hollywood, buddy.
Ted, I've really enjoyed talking to you, listening to you, and you have no lack of curiosity, which is admirable. You'll go places.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, my pleasure, Steve. And I want you to know that I watched you all the time. Yeah, no, I used to watch you.
Thank you.
Good stuff, man.
That's nice to hear.
Yeah, it was good stuff.
It's so long ago I can't even remember it.
Well, that may be a good thing. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe. Thank you.
My pleasure meeting you.
Still Here Hollywood is a production of the Still Here Network. All things technical run by Justin Zangerly. Theme music by Brian Sanashin. And executive producer is Jim Lichtenstein.